Alright, giving a new deck a whirl. Trostani, Selesnya's Voice. And I think we're going to keep that hand. We don't have too much going, but worst case scenario, we can E-Witness into Sakura Tribelder again. Up against Daxos of Meletis, Surrak Dragonclaw, and Jodah Archmage Eternal. Be intrigued to see which version of Jodah this is. Trostani, Selesnya's Voice is 4 mana in Selesnya for a 2/5. Whenever another creature enters under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness, and then for 3 and tap you can populate. That is, create a token copy of a token creature you control. Nothing to do on turn 1, but a Windswept Heath is nice. That means we can get our cycling dual land out of the way that I always forget the name of. And just going to pass like that to Daxos of Meletis. That is a 3 mana Azorius commander, a 2/2. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. And when it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of their library. You gain life equal to its CMC, and until the end of the turn you may cast that card and spend mana of any type to cast it. And Oh Naginata comes down. That is +3 to attack with Trample. Surrak Dragonclaw is Temur, 5 mana, a 6/6 with Flash. It can't be countered. Creature spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have Trample. And finally, Jodah is 4 mana in Jeskai for a 4/3 flyer. You can pay Wooburg rather than pay for the mana cost of spells you cast. A Faithless Looting from Jodah. Draw 2, discard 2. And just discarding a couple of lands, which is quite telling, so it might be that Jodah has a fistful of lands in hand. Not going to run out that Sol Ring too quickly because we don't want to paint ourselves as a target, and it doesn't actually help us in the early game anyway. As we can see, our commander is 4 colours to play, so the sooner we can get colours down the better. In fact, I think I'm just going to crack the Sakura Tribelder now because we're not going to be blocking with it. And a Nim Deathmantle, so this is obviously some kind of Voltron build for Daxos. Now, the old Naginata can only be attached to a creature with power 3 or greater. I thought that was curious to include in a Daxos deck, but the Nim Deathmantle does give +2/+2. And a fairly slow start from everyone so far. We are against 3 colours that can get rid of artifacts and enchantments. There's green here and then white either side. So, rushing down a Zendikar Resurgent, it could pay off for us, but I think it's best to just wait a little bit for people to get things out of their hands. We'll see what happens. Just cracking the Krosan Verge for a forest and a plains. And they have every colour except black now. Alright, yet another land for us. Let's go for the command tower, and then do we just get down? Yeah, I think we get down our Trostani here. Because even if someone removes it, we will be able to recast it easily thanks to that Sol Ring. And it enters. No one has any free counter magic that they want to use on Trostani. Down comes Daxos. But luckily they don't have the mana to equip Daxos up with anything yet. And a Daybreak Ranger coming down for Surrak. Don't think I've ever seen anyone play this. This might be Werewolf Tribal. You can deal 2 damage to a creature with flying, and it flips over into a 4/4, and red and tap, it fights another creature. So that is definitely worth keeping an eye on. We'll see what Jodah gets into. Still no black mana. Maybe a Cultivate here. Nope, it's an Explore, draw, and play an additional land. And that was a forest, was it? And a Sylvan Scrying. Search your library for a land and put it into your hand. They went for a Smouldering Marsh. Enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basics, so that will be Wooburg for our opponent next turn. And we are just drawing into lands. I say we just get down the wooded foothills and wait on a Beast Within. Yeah, if we just keep drawing into lands and everyone else is slow rolling things out. They don't have too many cards in hand, but I think it's still worth holding on to a Beast Within. You never know, this Daxos might come in at us. although they won't be able to do too much apart from exile the top card of our library. Yeah, we'll just leave it for now. Have to take a turn off here, and we might make use of a Beast Within. And because we didn't cast anything, the werewolf flips over. Now, I'm not too worried about that because our Trostani has 5 toughness to the werewolf's 4 power. Now then, let's see where this Daxos is going. That's going in at Jodah, so I'm going to allow it. And a Unity of Purpose is exiled by Daxos. They can cast that, untap each creature you control with a plus counter on it and support 2. I don't know if they necessarily want to put a plus counter on there. Might not be worth 4 mana to them. And I don't know if they care about untapping Daxos either. Yeah, just going for an Golem's Eye instead. Oh, and a Jitte is definitely something that is Beast Within worthy. And because Daxos cast 2 spells last turn, the werewolf flips back over and they opted not to fight the Daxos. Yeah, so maybe we just wait and see what Daxos does here. They're painting themselves as the person to watch out for. They've only got 2 cards in hand though, so they might be overextending. And a Silver Fur Partisan. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, you get a wolf token. And going in at Jodah with the Daybreak Ranger, just 2 damage. That is the first blood of the game, I think. Down comes that Smothering Marsh that we knew about, so that fixes Wooburg for Jodah. And then it's a Signal the Clans. Search your library for 3 creatures, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Alright, let's see here. We have Noyan Dar, Royal Shaper, Selvala Explorer Returned, and Drift of Phantasms. It might be that this is like a legendary tribal deck. Will go really good with the new Sisse that was spoiled in Modern Horizons. Okay, I think it's time for us to go for our Zendikar Resurgent. This means that our lands tap for 2 mana, and whenever we cast a creature spell, we draw a card. So I think Eternal Witness onto the Sakura Tribe Elder next turn would be good. That assumes that the Zendikar Resurgent sticks around that long. We will pass the turn like that. Not going to bother swinging in with Trostani. I'm still hoping that Daxos is the major threat on board that everyone is looking at. The Noyan Dar, by the way, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you may put 3 plus counters on a land, and that land becomes a 0/0 elemental with haste. Daxos going back in at Jodah. They're obviously hoping to find some good stuff there. Jodah, I imagine, is ram full of really good spells that they can cheat out for that Wooburg cost. Exiling a Fumigate this time. I'll be intrigued to see if they want to cast that, destroy all creatures and gain a life. For each creature destroyed this way, I'm actually not against that. We haven't made use of our Trostani, unfortunately. We haven't drawn into any token generators. But as long as our Zendikar Resurgent stays intact, then I'm okay with a board wipe. Okay, going for the Jitte after attacks, which is strange. Maybe they wanted to hold up mana for whatever they were going to reveal off of the Jodah. I don't suppose there's necessarily anything that they're too eager to get rid of with that Jitte. The only things on board are these wolves and werewolves. And because Daxos didn't cast anything, this flips back over into the Fight Werewolf. And that will be able to trade with the Noyan Dar. Not too sure they'll actually want to do that though. Alright, and they are deciding to fight the Daxos player this time. We can get 2 spells on the go next turn if we go for the Eternal Witness and Sakura Tribe Elder. That will draw us a couple of cards, and we'll go up a land, and it will also get this to flip back round. But we're not really too worried about it currently. And the Daxos does go into the graveyard. They managed to change the zones, so Nim Deathmantle will trigger. And our opponent can pay 4 for that to bring Daxos back. Nim Deathmantle says, whenever a non-token creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you can pay 4 generic mana, and if you do, it comes back with the Deathmantle attached to it. And that will give it +2/+2, and Intimidate, and it makes it a black zombie. And there we are, Daxos is now a 4/4 black zombie, but it does have Intimidate, so it can only be blocked by, I think it's black creatures and artifact creatures. I always get Fear and Intimidate mixed up. And then the Silver Fur Partisan swinging in at Daxos as well. 5 cards in hand, they've obviously got some kind of combat trick. And our opponent remarking that it's Daxos the Returned, which is not something I thought about. That's humorous. And Daxos didn't take the bait by blocking there, so I'm not sure what the Silver Fur Partisan was up to there. Probably just some kind of big buff spell in order to get rid of the Daxos. I thought it might be some kind of card draw effect by the amount of damage dealt by the creature, but obviously not. Rude Awakening. And I don't know which they're going for there. They've decided to turn their lands into 2/2s. And the Noyandar put the plus counters onto the Gitu encampment. A Benefactor's Drought. Untap all creatures until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls blocks, draw a card. And the Benefactor's Drought has you draw a card as well. And then it's a lot more plus counters on another land. Now that these things are creatures, they will die to board wipes, so it's a tricky thing to navigate with a Noyandar. Because we have quite a bit of life gain in this deck, I think we're just going to take any damage that comes our way. Noteworthy that thanks to the Benefactor's Drought, untapping all creatures, the Fight Werewolf is still up. And now Jodah is going for the flashback on Faithless Looting. Let's draw 2 and discard 2 again. Let's see what they discarded. A couple of lands being discarded again. This might be some kind of lands matter Jodah deck. Okay, E-Witness. The Eternal Witness is grabbing back the Benefactor's Drought, so they'll be able to untap everything again and play more stuff. They've only got 2 cards left in hand though. Okay, and casting the Benefactor's Drought, it might be that they want to generate enough mana to get down Jodah and pay the Wooburg. Dumping a load more counters onto the Sheltered Thicket. And then a Tomic Distinguished Advocist. Lands on the battlefield and land cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponent controls. And your opponents can't play land cards from graveyards. So all that really means is that we can't beast within any of these lands, and I'm not sure we would have done that anyway. And a Splendid Reclamation brings back all the land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And putting more plus counters on a different land this time. So that's 3 lands that have been turned into creatures. It's a risky play. It's not something that I've ever really liked the idea of, is animating my lands, because you do see board wipes quite often in Commander. But our opponent has been looting away lands, so they'll get a lot here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... I don't know, 6 lands was that? And now nothing in hand, so let's see if they decide to swing in or not. They have emptied their hand successfully. And all of that going in at Daxos. And Daxos has been swinging in at Jodah, so that might have been expected. Deciding not to block, so we'll see how much damage this is. That looked like 27 damage to me. So that was an interesting turn by Jodah, but doesn't seem as though they have anything else to do now. They are in top deck mode. Okay, Hour of Reckoning. That is very tempting after we were just talking about being able to wipe out land creatures. Let's go for the Eternal Witness onto the Sakura Tribe Elder. That will draw us a card with Zendikar Resurgent. We'll see if we can get anything going this turn. Alright, Trostani Summoner will do it. We can still cast the Sakura Tribe Elder first, so we'll do that just to get the card draw. Yeah, I think we can go Trostani Summoner, Sakura Tribe Elder, and Populate here, can't we? Yeah, I think we can. It means we're not holding up Beast Within, but I think we want to get this game going. Now then, Harrow actually nets us quite a nice bit of mana, so let's go for that as well. We'll get rid of a Plains. We'll take a Forest. And we'll take another Forest. Okay, and we get into an Angel of Sanctions. This is mainly in here for the Embalm, but It's good for after a board wipe as well that we can make use of it again. Trostani Summoner is a 1/1 and it enters with a bunch of tokens as we're about to see. Alright, and now we will populate on the 4/4 Rhino Trample. And we're up to 54 life, and I think that we can just pass at that. Might go in for the Hour of Reckoning next turn, because that will destroy all non-token creatures. But if we do that, I think we'll copy another Rhino first. Oh, Naginata going on to Daxos, and we'll see if the bout between Jodah and Daxos continues. And then let's see where this Daxos is going. It's going back in at Jodah, so there seems to be a bit of a grudge match going on there. And the longer the game goes on, the more likely it is that Daxos will actually be able to cast whatever's exiled with Daxos' ability. And it's just a forest. I don't know if Daxos can play lands from our opponent. No, you have to cast the card and lands are not cast. So our opponent got nothing with the Daxos there, but they are on 11 points of commander damage, which isn't nothing. Looks like Surrak is just cracking the Myriad Landscape. Nope, going for a fact or fiction. Let's see which opponent has to split the pile up. It is the Jodah player that has to split them up. And they've gone for Ramp and Soul of Harvest in the same pile. I think I might have gone for a land and Soul of Harvest in the same pile just to dissuade them from the Soul of Harvest. But they binned it anyway, so not to worry on that front. A Hermit of the Natanols coming down. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, you draw a card. That's worth 3 mana on its own. And then whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, you draw 2 cards if it's a werewolf. Now, it might be that Jodah doesn't cast any spells here. They don't seem to have been too eager to get the commander down. And if they don't cast any spells, then these werewolves are going to flip over. Well, Jodah and Daxos seem to have some history with each other. If those two want to hold a grudge against each other and go at it, then that's fine with me. We do seem to be the biggest threat on the board, and Surrak can come out of nowhere as well. Alright, and activating the Gitu Encampment to have it become a 2/1 creature with first strike. Oh, and a Settle the Wreckage. They'll get a lot of lands into play at least, but they're not going to be creature lands anymore. So that knocks Jodah off of their game plan, I think. Settle the Wreckage, exile all attacking creatures a target player controls, and that player may search their library for that many basics and put them into play tapped. I wonder how many basic lands Jodah actually has, because you need a lot of multicoloured non-basic lands to make Wooburg. But no, they do seem to have quite a few basics. Glad to get a Settle the Wreckage out of Daxos' hand before we swing in at them. I think it might be time for an Hour of Reckoning next turn. Just another land. Wow, we are really not doing too well with these things. Let's get down an Angel of Sanctions. I'm doing this just to draw a card. If we're looking at wiping the board, then I'd preferably not play Angel of Sanctions yet, but we'll just have to see what we draw here and hope it's not another land. Oh, and a Tendershoot Dryad. Do we overextend with a Tendershoot Dryad? I don't think we do, actually. Let's just exile the Daxos straight up here, and then if they decide to actually exile it and put it under the Angel of Sanctions, then no, well, anyway, they don't. That goes into the command zone again, finally. Might as well make use of that floating mana. Let's get another Rhino into play. I'm going to hold on to the Tendershoot Dryad, because if someone does board wipe, there's nothing we can do about it right now. So that will be a good way for us to rebuild our board. And Daxos is wide open, so we'll just go in at them. I put that at 16 damage, I think. Let's see if they're left at 4. Yep, that's 16 damage, takes them down to 4. They may well be out of the game after this turn. Down comes Daxos again, so it looks like he doesn't have a board wipe. Definitely would have cast it if he did. They don't have the mana held up for the Nim Deathmantle either, so if we do manage to remove Daxos from the board, then it will just go into the command zone, I would have thought. Now, Surrak Dragonclaw has been sitting quietly over there, 6 cards still in hand, and hasn't cast the commander yet. They could just cast no creatures here to flip their werewolves over and then go for Surrak during an opponent's turn, which looks like, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And the 2 werewolves do flip over, and a Psychosis Crawler from Jodah. I'm not entirely sure what tactic they're going for here. Jodah can be a pretty confusing commander to play against because there's so many different tactics that you can use with it. Is the Selvala still in our opponent's hand? I'm not sure. I haven't done a very good job of keeping track of the game. I'm sure someone in the comments can inform us of whether or not Selvala should still be in Jodah's hand. And still going in at the Daxos player. And I'd be intrigued to see if Surrak decides to fight the Daxos or not. Just blocking, Daxos has to here, but noteworthy that the Jitte can minus the Noyandar down to 0. 2 damage from Daxos, and then -2/-2 from the Jitte. Alright, now I'm worried about a board wipe from Daxos, so I think I am going to take them out of the game, and now I'm going to start swinging in at Surrak as well. So let's go in for Mirari's Wake. That will be +1/+1 to our creatures, and whenever we tap a land for mana, we get an additional mana, so that means our lands are now tapping for 3 mana apiece. Then we'll populate another Rhino, and it's just a case of holding on to our hand again. Throw out a land and go to combat. Now, it might be that Daxos has a path or a swords. They do have means of gaining life. Well, that's very honest of our opponent. I asked if they were going to wipe the board, so we are just going to have to go in at them. They can gain 4 life here. So that's at least 8 damage we have to deal to them. Alright, just going to spread the damage around here. We've got the E-Witness and the Trostani's Summoner going in at Daxos, along with a Rhino. The Angel going straight down the middle, and then a Centaur going in at Jodah, a Knight going in at Daxos, and then a couple of Rhinos going in at Jodah as well. Not swinging in too much at Surrak because I have no doubt that Surrak is coming into play at flash speed now. And I committed quite a few creatures to Daxos because I don't know if they have Condemn or Path or something like that. Obviously they can gain some life with the Jitte as well. Alright, and a Cross and Grip going in at Mirari's Wake. That's not really something we're all that concerned about. We've got plenty of mana. I'd actually rather they went for the Mirari's Wake instead of the Zendikar Resurgent. That is card draw for us. But it's less damage going in at everybody. Your boy, Tribalkai. Please. And the Jitte taking out Eternal Witness. We might not have put too many creatures into the red zone against Daxos, actually. Now that the Mirari's Wake has gone. We didn't know Surrak was going to do that, so that might actually change this combat a little bit. -1/-1 going on the Centaur. Let's see what we've got going in here at Daxos. That's 1 there. And then there's, 4/4 with Trample. Yeah, and then there's a 2/2 Knight, so they were done either way there. We committed more than enough. And there we go, Daxos is down. Alright, and I think, just still holding up Beast Within and the Tender Shoot Dryad. I think Beast Within currently is aimed at the Nightfall Predator, because if that goes in to fight something of ours, then we definitely want to keep that from happening. The problem is, if we go for Beast Within in response to that during our opponent's turn, they will draw a couple of cards from the Lone Wolf of Natanals, Tapping out is quite scary. That is, a Genesis wave. Okay, well, we'll see what they get here. Might be closer to being time for an Hour of Reckoning than I originally thought. What just happened there? I have no idea what happened there. Our opponent went for 5 mana into X on the Genesis wave. They could have gotten a Huntmaster of the Fells, a Mondronan Shaman, an Iskron Scepter, and a Sol Ring. Not sure how useful the Iskron Scepter would have been, but I obviously don't know what's in my opponent's hand. Yeah, our opponents are being really good sports this game. We've got 3 good players that seem to have a really good sense of humour and don't want to just rage quit every chance they get, so it's good to play against 3 players like that for a change. It's not often you come across good-hearted people like that. Yeah, they should have got these things into play. That's really unfortunate. A Huntmaster of the Fells might have changed things around a little bit for them. Yeah, so that's a shame to see that. But I've said a million times that Magic Online is not the most intuitive program on earth. Jodah, drawing a card, will deal the damage to us with the Psychosis Crawler. And they are still somewhat in top deck mode. We know that Jodah runs board wipes because we saw one earlier on with Daxos. Alright, don't think we've seen Jodah this game, have we? I'll be intrigued to see if they can get any kind of cheating going on with the Wooburg. Just going for a morph creature. This is all over the place. Very unpredictable deck by a friend of the channel in the Joho. Must make yourself known in the comments, Joho, if you are watching this, and if you want to. Not going to use the Beast Within because I think we're going for Hour of Reckoning now. And Jodah cast 2 spells, so these werewolves are going to flip back over. And Jodah cast 2 spells during their turn, so that means that the werewolves are going to flip back over. Alright, we get into a Swords to Plowshares. Let's populate with Trostani first. We'll make yet another Rhino, 4/4 with Trample. And then I think it's Hour of Reckoning. We might as well pay Convoke on these 2, because they are going to die in this board wipe. And we'll tap down the Rhino as well because it has Summoning Sickness, so it won't be able to swing him. That will leave us with a green floating. We'll recast our commander just so that we can draw a card with the Zendikar Resurgent. We get into a land there, nothing too impressive. I think we're still holding on to this Tendershoot Dryad. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think it's what we need to be going for here. What have we got? 4, 8, 12, 14. I think we've got enough to take out Jodah here. So let's swing everything in at Jodah. Get rid of them while we still can. We know that they're running board wipes. It's less likely that a Teamer Commander will get board wipes on the go. And there we are. It's just down to us and Surrak now. So how about we finally get down this Tendershoot Dryad? Oh, and that's a shame. Surrak decided to call it a day. Clearly they didn't have much in their hand. Okay, well I did ask Winter's Bane what they had in hand there, but either they had already left the game or they didn't respond in time because the client quit out. But apparently they didn't fancy their odds of getting back into that anyway. Even if they'd gotten the cards down off of the Genesis wave, they would have been wiped out by the Hour of Reckoning, so that wouldn't have made much of a difference. Although it does feel bad that newer players sometimes click through things like that. Like I say, it's not the most intuitive client, and it is something that you really need to just try and learn, really. Anyway, that was Trostani, Selesnya's Voice. We were up against 3 really good players there. It was a lot of fun to play against them. So I'd be more than happy to play against players like that all the time. If any of you are watching the video, then be sure to let yourself be known in the comments section. I'm sure some of us would like to hear from you about your deck and the way the game went for you. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed that. Trostani, Selesnya's Voice game. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.